I want you to imagine this. You've just achieved everything you've ever dreamed of. The house of your dreams, the car you once had pinned on your wall, a bank account full of zeros. You look around and realize there's nothing left to want. Strange, isn't it? The moment you have everything is often the moment you feel the emptiest. I once asked a wealthy friend in Toronto what scared him most. He said, "It's not being poor, it's having nothing left to strive for." And that's when I understood happiness isn't found in having, it's found in wanting. It lives in those mornings when you wake up excited about what you're about to do. It's in those moments when you imagine your future and truly believe you're on your way there. I've worked with many adults, people in their 30s and 40s, with families, steady jobs, and most of them have told me, I miss what it felt like to dream. Because as long as we dream, we're still alive. As long as we desire, we have direction. A psychologist in Montreal once told me, the human brain releases the most dopamine not when we receive a reward, but when we're getting close to it. In other words, joy lives in the journey, not the destination. So if today you're still trying, if there are things you haven't yet achieved, dreams that still keep you up at night, be grateful. Don't be sad because you don't have it all. That sense of not yet is the fire that keeps you alive. One day, when you have everything, you'll realize the most precious thing you ever had was the feeling of wanting, moving, and believing. Because maybe real happiness isn't about reaching the dream, it's about being allowed to keep dreaming. Let me share a small perspective that could change how you see everyday life. It starts with something simple. Instead of saying, I have to, say, I get to. I remember a woman I worked with in Vancouver once told me, I'm exhausted. Every morning I have to take my kids to school, I have to work, I have to cook. I looked at her and asked, if tomorrow you no longer had your children to take to school, would you want to do it again? The whole room went silent. We often treat ordinary things as obligations, but they're actually privileges. You get to take your kids to school because some people dream of hearing the word mom and never will. You get to go to work because someone else is at home, terrified about not having a job. You get to fix your car because at least you have one to drive. When I lived in Toronto, I saw people rush through life, sighing, I have to work, I have to hit deadlines. But you know what? Changing just one word, have to get, changes everything. Because behind every get to is something worth being grateful for. You still have ability, opportunity, and time. Researchers at the University of British Columbia found that practicing gratitude, even for a few minutes a day, significantly lowers stress and increases happiness. So next time you're tired, overwhelmed, or caught in the chaos of responsibility, pause, breathe, and whisper, I get to do this. That small shift will remind you that life, even with its pressure, is still a gift, and maybe, just maybe, in that quiet exhale, you'll realize happiness was never far away. It's been right there in everything you already do. I want to tell you a short story about gratitude and scarcity. When I was living in Montreal, I coached a businessman who had everything: luxury cars, a beautiful home, a packed calendar. But he told me, I don't feel joy anymore. Everything I once dreamed of has become just stuff. I asked, when was the last time you felt grateful for a simple meal? He was silent. For a long time. We often think gratitude is natural, but it's not. Humans can't truly be grateful for what they have in excess. When something becomes abundant, we lose touch with its value. Food, love, freedom, health. Only when we lose it, or limit ourselves, do we remember what enough feels like. I often tell my clients, learn to say no to yourself sometimes, not to suffer, but to restore your capacity to feel. Spend a day without your phone. Drink only water one morning. go a week without eating out. Then, when you return to the ordinary, your phone, your coffee, your meal, you'll feel that original spark of joy again. Science backs this up. Researchers at the University of Toronto found that when people practice intentional deprivation, the brain reactivates its dopamine pathways, the same ones responsible for pleasure, twice as strongly as when living in constant abundance. In other words, limiting yourself is how you rediscover the joy of living. So if life feels dull today, don't chase more. Try having less. Let yourself feel what it means to truly have. A glass of cold water, a warm meal, a sunset. Because sometimes happiness isn't found in new things. It's in feeling old things with a renewed heart. I remember one winter evening in Vancouver after the gym closed. One of my clients, a man in his mid-30s, married with 2 kids, told me, "I'm burnt out." Not from work, but from feeling like nothing excites him anymore. I asked, "When was the last time you really rewarded yourself?" He laughed. "Every day. Expensive coffee, good food, movies, but it doesn't make me happier." That's when I understood. He wasn't rewarding himself. He was indulging himself without earning it. And when you receive something without effort, your brain stops associating it with joy. I told him, "From now on, only reward yourself when you deserve it. Want that favorite coffee? Finish your report first. Want that nice dinner? Work out before you go?" Just a month later, he came back smiling, saying, "That coffee today tasted better than ever." That moment taught me that temporary happiness is easy. Deep happiness must be earned. When you make yourself do something hard before something easy, you're teaching your brain a rule. Joy comes after effort, not before. That's how you build disciplined dopamine, a term many neuroscientists use today. Instead of chasing quick hits of pleasure, scrolling, snacking, shopping, attach your dopamine to real accomplishment. Try this. Write down a few small things you love, a coffee, a movie, a weekend break, and link each one to a specific goal. Only when you complete that goal can you enjoy it. You'll find that every reward becomes sweeter, deeper, and more meaningful. Life doesn't need grand moments of joy. If you can delay small pleasures on purpose, you're building inner strength, the kind no money can buy. Let every happiness be a victory, and every victory a reminder. You deserve it, because you earned it. I want to talk about something I call the backbone of freedom: discipline. Most people think freedom is doing whatever they want, but true freedom is having the ability to do what you must, even when you don't feel like it. I remember a session in Calgary with a group of people over 40. One man said, "I can never stick to a routine. I start strong, then lose interest." I asked him, "If you only work when you feel motivated, when will you ever finish what matters most?" He went silent. We all love the rush of motivation. But motivation is emotion. It comes and goes. Discipline is choice. And choice stays. I've met many successful Canadians, entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, and the one thing they share isn't talent. It's consistent boredom. They wake up early when it's cold. They practice when no one's watching. They keep going when no one claps. Science shows it too. Our brains only form neural pathways of mastery after repeating an action for at least 60 days. Discipline, quite literally, rewires the brain. When you keep doing the right thing long enough, your emotions start to follow your actions. Yes, there are days when you wake up and don't want to do anything. I have those days too, but those are the days you need discipline the most. Every time you win against your own laziness, even by getting up early, finishing a task, or working out for 10 minutes, you strengthen your belief that I can control my life. That's real power, not wealth, not luck, self-mastery. When you have discipline, you don't wait for inspiration, you create it. You don't hope things will change, you become the person who makes them change. So if there's one thing worth training for life, it's discipline. Because discipline doesn't kill freedom, it creates it. There's a curious paradox I often share in my talks around Toronto. Sometimes you have to limit yourself to truly expand your soul. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? But think about it. When everything becomes easy, we grow lazy, even in our spirit. I once met a successful man who had it all: career, money, reputation. Yet he told me, "I feel like I'm alive, but there's no life in me." I asked, "Do you still challenge yourself?" He gave a sad smile. Honestly, no. There's nothing left to conquer. And that's the problem. When there are no boundaries, the inner fire fades. We need positive pressure. Challenges that make us feel alive. No one finds meaning by standing still. Self-limiting isn't self-punishment. It's a subtle form of discipline. We set our own lines, then cross them step by step. Like a climber who doesn't hate the summit, they simply love the feeling of getting closer with every step. I often tell my clients, each month, pick one thing that scares you or makes you lazy, and do it. Maybe it's speaking in public. Maybe it's a 5K run. Maybe it's just waking up 30 minutes earlier to sit in silence and think. These small challenges are your mental gym, where you rebuild the muscle of will. A study from the University of Alberta found that people who regularly set voluntary challenges, even small ones, have over 40% greater psychological resilience in the face of hardship. In other words, applying moderate, self-chosen pressure teaches the brain to adapt and rediscover excitement in life. So don't fear the limits you set for yourself. Every time you say no to the easy way, you're saying yes to maturity. Every time you move through fear, you open more space inside your soul. One day, when you look back, you'll see those very limits helped you become the freest, strongest version of yourself. I used to believe that being strong meant controlling emotions, hiding them, always appearing steady. After years of working with hundreds of adults in Canada, I've learned emotions aren't the enemy. They're signals. Have you ever felt angry, exhausted, or discouraged for no clear reason? You're not weak. Your body and mind are trying to tell you something. Anger can signal a boundary crossed. Sadness can point to something unhealed. Fatigue doesn't only come from work. It comes from forcing yourself to do what no longer matters. One client, a 45-year-old man in Ottawa, kept up the image of being strong, never breaking. One day, he cried in the middle of a session. "I'm not tired of work," he said. "I'm tired of pretending I'm okay for 10 years. That's when I understood. Real strength isn't feeling nothing. It's daring to feel and still move forward. A Toronto psychologist once told me, "Emotions are like the warning lights on your dashboard. Ignore them and the car breaks down." Exactly. Emotions tell us whether we're off course or on track. When you learn to observe emotions without letting them drive, you master yourself at a level deeper than discipline. Try asking, not "why do I feel this way?" but "what inside me needs to be heard?" When you dialogue with your emotions instead of fighting them, peace comes more easily. The bravest people I've met are the ones who dare to cry, admit they're afraid, and keep going. Emotions don't make you weak. They make you real. And when you're real with yourself, you're strong enough for the world. Remember, emotions don't need to be crushed. They need to be understood. Only when we understand ourselves can we truly steer our lives. Picture this. You're sitting alone in a cafe with a blank page in front of you. No notifications, no emails, no noise. Just you, a pen, and your thoughts. If I asked, "What do you truly want from this life?" could you answer? Most of us are so busy we never stop to ask. We work, we earn, We chase other people's goals and forget our own map. I call it living by someone else's GPS. After years working with adults in Canada, I've seen it. The more accomplished people become, the easier it is to lose direction. They have everything except clarity. I once coached a Vancouver entrepreneur with 3 companies, a happy family, and a nameless emptiness. One day, I asked him to do something simple. Write down 3 things worth waking up early and staying up late for. He wrote, family, freedom, inspiring others. As he read them aloud, the light came back in his eyes. You don't need 10 or 100 goals. You need 3 that are truly worth living for. They become your compass, your filter for decisions. Before each choice, ask, does this move me closer to those 3? If the answer is no, you know what to do. A therapist once said to me, people don't get lost for lack of time, but for lack of purpose. So true. Take time to rewrite your life map. It doesn't have to be grand, just honest. Maybe you want more time with your kids. Maybe a new career. Maybe a slower life to find yourself again. When you write it down, you're telling the universe, I know where I'm going. And strangely, once you have direction, life begins to open roads. The person holding a map, even walking slowly, will always go farther than the one who doesn't know what they're looking for. I had a retired doctor friend in Vancouver. He lived simply, no social media, no showing off, but there was a calm light in his eyes. I asked him one day, what makes you seem so happy? He smiled, sipped his tea, and said, because I stopped chasing happiness. I just live with gratitude. That answer changed how I see success. We're taught that happiness is at the finish line. The house, the income, the title. But when we reach it, we want more. The finish line keeps moving. True happiness isn't about achieving. It's about perceiving. A student once told me, I just want a day with nothing to worry about. I said, that day will come when you're no longer alive. Life, by nature, is movement, friction, effort, fatigue. And within that, we find meaning. Happiness isn't an easy life. It's a steady heart in a life that's inevitably hard. A University of Toronto study showed that people who keep a daily gratitude journal have about 30% lower depression rates and more than double the life satisfaction. 5 minutes each night. Write 3 things you're grateful for. A meal, a listener, or simply your breath. And the world begins to change. When you pause to be grateful, your mind stops comparing. Without comparison, you don't feel lacking. And without lack, you are enough. That is the peak of success, inner peace. So remember, happiness isn't in grand moments but in seeing the miracle in small things. When you can sit down, breathe deeply, and say, today, I'm still here. I can love. I can dream. You've touched the highest form of success a human can reach. Peace.